I never thought Aggretsuko was the second coming of Christ, but I did think it was good. Good enough at least to warrant 2 videos, one both on Season 2 and one on Season 3, where I praised the show, and where Season 3 left off, it honestly had me very excited to see how the 4th season would be handled. That being said, making videos once every year on each new season, I think I've managed to get a decent sample of what other Aggretsuko fans seem to think of the series, at least in the past tense, and I guess I'll find out with the comments on this video as well. There seems to be a general sentiment, at least there was especially on my last video, that a portion of the fans have disliked the dramatic angle that Aggretsuko's taken increasingly from Season 2 and Season 3 onward. But while some people didn't like the direction into more developed characters and storylines and wanted the show to remain purely comedic and simple like Season 1, I disagreed with that sentiment. I thought Season 1 was by far the weakest, with Season 2's bar being set so much further above it that, and in my mind, an arguably better way. And Season 3 just expounded on that to a new standard, but with Season 4 here, I finally found myself in that group of fans I always disagreed with. Aggretsuko Season 4 is, at worst, incoherent, almost entirely. The multiple branching storylines that tie back in for one great finale that we saw in Season 3, I think, handled wonderfully, have turned into a nice setup of a few characters that slowly bundle into a car wreck of a collision at the end. Rather than more meaningful stories merging in and out in plot threads that come and go, character arcs start and end, with more important details being swept aside for tangential callbacks and associative plot relevance. I'm really just spitting words at you because it's hard to know where to start here, I guess. So, the best place, I suppose, is the positives. And while there's plenty that wasn't handled terrible, I mean, most of it is at least somewhat competent other than the last few episodes, and I still enjoyed myself decently through most of the season, there's really only one standout thing that I would say was great in terms of writing, and it's in the early to middling part of the season with the character Tone. Tone was introduced as the flat, parody evil, literal chauvinist pig boss, and ever since then the show has been working their hardest to humanize him as more than just the scum of the earth. Rather than by retconning, thank goodness, but by offering deeper perspective to his character. Not even necessarily justifying his actions by any regard, but making it so you can understand his actions in the way he thinks and why he thinks that way more, and not see them purely as negative, but maybe as a more nuanced gray. You kind of get the idea over the seasons that he's genuinely good-hearted, but surrounded by these dated perspectives on pride and masculinity. Like he isn't aware of what he's doing that makes others uncomfortable, and how he's acting is just how he remembers his boss acting in order to keep things working, because he wants to be a good boss too, because they worked when he was young, so they should work now. It's this flawed yet understandable old-fashioned sentiment that goes into Aggretsuko Season 4, but for the first time, I think we really do see these prideful ideals genuinely point aim and harm only him, which I think humanizes his weaknesses. It shows that these perspectives that are a product of his age and of society that has changed around him are just as much a damage to him as they are to others. It's sympathetic. In Aggretsuko Season 4, Tone gets tasked with downsizing the accounting branch, in other words, firing his fellow co-workers. But after gossiping and making the choice of who it should be, he can't bring himself to do it. All the people in the accounting branch are his family, even if only 1 or 2 of the ones that were there when he started are still there. He goes up to the interim boss that focuses most of Season 4's conflict on, and tells him he refuses to fire them. In exchange, he gets his job replaced. Due to Japanese laws, it is very hard to outright fire someone, so it's common for people to be given useless jobs or isolated from their previous coworkers as a part of a shift change. Essentially, it's putting the squeeze on them, it's making the employee feel expendable, and eventually they will leave on their own. That's the idea. When the other old employee ends up finding out how Tone is being treated, he insists to her that she not tell anyone, because he doesn't want them to worry. This is Tone's pride getting in the way. He doesn't want charity. He doesn't want to be the victim. He doesn't want to feel like everyone else had to help him get back up. He's their boss, after all. Yet he does care about them enough to risk his own job over it. The great part is something I've seen heard and talked about quite often, sometimes in other shows, where the man leaves to go to work but turns around and does something else all day until it's time to come home, putting on the charade of going to work without actually doing so. Once again, he cares about his family, but the shame of being unable to provide for them makes him lie about work. Showing him at the trains, clearly with unsavory consideration to jump, it's pretty dark and genuinely emotionally touching whenever his wife can tell that he's depressed, but she doesn't know why, and so she decides to make him lunch for work. When he skips work then, goes to the park by himself for multiple days like he's been doing, and opens up the lunch to have a cutely written phrase on the top, "Don't give up." Incredible stuff. If all of Aggretsuko Season 4 was like this, it might have been great, but it wasn't. The main arc with Retsuko and Haida was really cool to start with, them both realizing they liked each other but not being able to cross that boundary. Or at least, it would have been cool if they hadn't dragged it out for half of the season's runtime. Just back and forth with very little happening, them walking home day after day and him wimping out. I got the point while watching where I thought, okay, good, maybe they shouldn't date, maybe they shouldn't, maybe they should just admit that they are horrible for each other and never try this again. It made me lose interest in the show's most vital will they won't they. That's a feat. Like, I guess it should be a big deal with multiple seasons of will they won't they and them trying to put emphasis on it and not wanting to feel rushed, but holy cow, somebody could have written like at least 2 story beats or interesting scenarios between the two of them. I'm an anime fan, for God's sakes. I've seen 10,000 shows handle will they won't they popcorn garbage, and I even enjoy it, you know what? But this was the most dull set of interactions I have ever seen. Finally though, once Retsuko makes the move, but not after the show writers push Haida to his most pathetically low and unlikable point yet, do we see them together at last. This lasts for one painfully saccharine sweet montage, which I thought was really cute until I realized that's all Aggretsuko even has to say about the relationship. A singular minute. Immediately once they're together, they start playing this idea that they've grown distant and start ramping up this angle of Haida working hard, but oh, he's doing something suspicious. Now motivated and feeling confident by Retsuko's approval, he has to push himself to become great. He feels he can do anything, but also is insecure about how pathetic he is compared to the great things that she's done. It honestly makes sense for a character arc. I just wish it was portrayed, you know, like through their relationship. And even if it wasn't, this wasn't how they should have done it. They literally start dating and then barely see or talk to each other for the rest of the season after that point, except for vital plot moments where they are blatantly set against each other. Episode 6 mostly stays stable, but Episode 7 is where the plot starts ramping up speed. While the first 5 episodes overall weren't that bad, they had a normal or possibly even slower pacing than is usual for the series. For the last 4 episodes of the season, the show reaches comically bad levels of pacing that I've never seen before in the series, or maybe even in general if we're talking about the pacing switch of a single season of television. Plot points are brought up and dropped succinctly, and so many things happen that makes you wonder what the heck they were even doing setting up the first 5 episodes for. It almost feels like they were ready to write a 15 or 20 episode season, and after they finished the first 5 episodes, they found out that they were just still getting 10. So instead of rewriting their project and the ideas of where they were taking it, they decided to cram all the writing ideas into the last few. Now there's some build up to Kabbai leaving from episode 4 to 6, but her decision, her leaving, and the aftermath reaction of that part are all done in 3 minutes of the 6th episode. She quits her job to look after her family as part of downsizing, then Inai just loses it, but it's not played comedically or creepily like we'd previously seen. It's so dramatic and serious and over the top, and that also starts to infect Aggretsuko in general, where the show starts feeling like a bad soap opera, focusing on these constant emotional gut punches that ring more and more hollow as the events that cause them start rushing by before your eyes before you've really registered their possible weight. Another thing that seems to give hint to this sort of extreme bloat and rushed pacing is the length of the episodes themselves. The first season of Aggretsuko had 15-minute episodes with a slightly longer 18-minute finale. Season 2 mostly stayed on track, with the finale being a minute longer. The third season started to become, on average, about a minute longer and a little more inconsistent with a longer finale, still staying under 20 minutes, but For that season, there were specific plot reveals, connections, cliffhangers, things that made sense in terms of pacing on why the episodes shouldn't be standardized in the old classic way. It actually preserved the quality of the show in Season 3. With Season 4, it's all over the place. Consistent, kind of, for the first few episodes, all of them being around 17 minutes, with increasing change in length, and at the end, a 27-minute finale. 27. Like, I get they're trying to end things on an epic note, but that's what they've done the last 3 seasons too, and they didn't need to make it almost 2 episodes long. Okay, starting episodes 7 and 8, Retsuko meets with Tadano for help and decides, based on his guidance, to start up her screaming YouTube channel again. And like a miracle, after not uploading in forever and having a fairly niche type of music interest, she starts blowing up with millions and millions of views and making buckets of money. Now, obviously, that's not what happens when you go a long time between uploads. I should know, since... well, look at my channel. But she then uses this huge success to rehire Ton for herself, who has since secretly began working at a konbini to be her accountant for her YouTube channel instead. Shortly after hiring Ton onto her new company, formed around her huge blossoming success, Ton begins to suspect Haida after his promotion, since he's been working really long and late hours for the boss. Out of this, they start, without much great reason to be honest, hard suspecting Haida of cooking the books for their company under the president's go order. Nobody even really seems to question it that much. Pretty much everybody's on board with the idea that that's what he's doing, despite the evidence, yeah, not looking great, but not exactly being rock hard either. She's also been working with Tadano again, by the way. Yeah, he's in the season a fair bit in the later half, mostly just to show up and tell people what they should be doing with their lives. And he ends up helping her record higher quality YouTube videos. Haida sees her with Tadano one time and feels jealous and insecure, especially since Retsuko isn't willing to admit that she was hanging out with her ex. And so he puts his nose down and tries harder at work, since she isn't willing to admit to any fault in the situation either. Then in the 9th episode, he completely remodels the office, puts up a high security system around his office, which is all like done over the weekend or whatever, and then there's a huge structured heist featuring Ton, Retsuko, Kabbai, Feneko, and seems like every other soul on Earth to go against Haida on the suspicion of intentional accounting errors, breaking into his computer all spy style, and oh, we're on episode 10 by the way. They distract him with fake auditors coming, they hack and copy the info off of his PC, then Haida meets with Tadano to arm wrestle because he still feels insecure, and then Ton dumps Haida into a karaoke room with Retsuko, where he claims he's been working hard for her, and she slaps him and blackmails him over the accounting error. By the way, they're still dating. Like, I know it seems like nothing about either of them is different, or even they've been more antagonistic than usual, and it really seems weird with what was 3 seasons of buildup, but yep, they just kind of stopped addressing or talking about the fact they're dating. They're just instantly into the bad area. So he goes into the president's office and arm wrestles him instead to keep his job and not do illegal stuff the next day. But somehow Retsuko knows when the meeting is happening and what is being said through the walls as they are rapping. And Ton is there too, despite having no reason to be left on premises because he lost his job. Oh yeah, I hadn't really mentioned that, but after he ditched a bunch of days at work, they fired him for real. So I don't know why Ton is even allowed still in the building. That's like some bad security, and he doesn't even do anything in the scene. Like, normally I wouldn't point that out, but it's normally the thing that would be explained, especially in an episode all about heists. And anyways, okay, let's calm down. During the arm wrestle, something happens that legitimately I didn't think was real. I thought it was a dream scene or some sort of metaphor or some sort of comedic retelling of the story. It's something that bends everything we knew about the world, where I thought it was just a metaphor or an exaggeration. Retsuko pops in on the arm wrestle rap battle and solar beam screams them out of the building. Like, straight up yells so loud she launches them out of the glass window, and they land on the window wiper's side thing, so they don't die at least. Oh yeah, he also shows up for like 2 scenes prior to this too, I guess to set up the save on the window. The whole thing feels like the worst possible way to write a story based on Chekov's gun principle. New president breaks all of his bones, old president inexplicably comes back, and everyone gets their jobs back, except Haida. The end. This season is a cluster. There's individual plot points here and there that would have made up half a season previously, and the setup for the new president was still pretty good too, with him initially being kind of like a do what must be done for the company type of person, a nuanced character that, you know, may do good things, may do bad things, but isn't necessarily antagonistic. But eventually they drop the nuance, like they do with everything, and he becomes a cartoonish criminal boss. I also liked some of the visual gags and references that they made throughout the thing. Like when Tone gets fired, he has the markers adjusted on the desk. And then whenever Haida tries to deny the president, he also hits the markers on the desk. It's a sort of callback, kind of good bit of writing that gives the feeling of quality, but it doesn't save what's actually written there. I was going to keep typing, but honestly, I don't want to. Aggretsuko Season 4 wasn't great. It was either painfully slow and redundant, or so fast it broke my neck. Hugely disappointed, but hey, hope you liked it. If not, hope you liked this video. Let me know what you think, and I'll probably respond to a lot of them. My Persona 4 Golden multi-series I've been working on for the last 3 months in the background starts coming out in February on the side channel, so please subscribe to that as well. All of my patrons will finally be getting crap tons of content. Like seriously, this is gonna be like 10 hours worth. And I appreciate all of the support. So thank you so much, friendly neighbor, Daniel Frowsing, my name is Klein, Whizbang2093, Frillneck Lizard, Icarus, and anyone else who has supported me, whether here or on Twitch. See you soon.